Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, hi, my name is Kim. I am an author illustrator, and here on my channel I love to create cozy and intentional videos about books and writing and just all around cozy lifestyle. So if all that sounds good to you, I invite you to subscribe. I post videos here at least twice a week and we have a grand old time. So if you want to be part of the community, feel free to subscribe down below. I would love to have you here. So friends, today I bring you an exciting video. It is quite a chatty video because I'm going to be talking about books. In particular, I'm going to be talking about the books that I own, physical books that I own, that I am super hyped about. Of course, all the books that I own, I am super hyped about and I cannot wait to get into, but I selected 10 books that I am extremely hyped about that I just cannot wait to get into. These are physical books that I own that I have not read, by the way, and needless to say, I own quite a bit of physical unread books. If you are new to my channel and don't know what kind of reading style or what type of books I'm into, I tend to have a wide range of genres that I am into or that I love reading, but lately, fantasy, cozy fantasy, horror, thrillers, paranormal, a little bit of gothic have been my go-to, and that's like all I want to read lately. But here and there I will throw in some historical fiction, some romance. I mean, I do love cozy romance, as well as murder mysteries, so those are things that I also love. So it's pretty wide. So the 10 books that I have here that I'm going to be showing you guys is around that mix of cozy fantasy, murder mystery, horror, thriller-ish. It's going to be around that mix. Before we get started though, I usually like to light up a candle here, and I have this little tarot inspired candle that I got, and it smells so good. So I'm just gonna light it up just so I can set the mood for us. I'm just gonna set it back here. I already have my cozy little drink, which is almost done. I've been drinking some coffee this morning. I am going to be showing the books in more of a rapid style format. I'm not gonna take too long explaining the synopsis, just for the sake of not making this video that long. So if you're interested in the book, please do a little bit more further research. I'm gonna just mention the overall just theme of the book. So without any further yapping, let's get into this video and talk about some books. Alright friends, here is my big book stack that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. Let's start off with the first one that I am just super excited about. Alright, starting off strong, this is The Moth Keeper by Kate O'Neill, and this is a middle grade fantasy graphic novel. There's one thing you need to know about me, is that I love middle grade and I love a good graphic novel, and I especially love it when it's a middle grade graphic novel, and this is one of them. In this story, we are following our main character, whose name is Anya. And Anya's people select someone to be the Moth Keeper. And in this case, Anya gets selected, which she is super excited about. But I believe in order to be a Moth Keeper, you have to go and live elsewhere or far from their village. And the whole purpose of a Moth Keeper is that you get to protect the moths, the lunar moths, I believe they're called, because the whole purpose of these lunar moths is that they allow the night lily flower, I believe, to bloom once a year, and that apparently is something very sacred to their people. And so there needs to be a moth keeper to protect the moths so this flower can bloom once a year. So Anya gets selected to become the Moth Keeper, and that means that they have to live far away from their village. And I believe this is something that they have to do throughout the night, where they have to take care of these lunar moths and then sleep during the day. I believe that's how it goes. So Anya thought that that's what she wanted to do their whole life, and then they end up finding out that that's not something that they really liked, and they really missed the sun. And so one day they decide to stay up during the day to feel the warmth of the sun, and that has severe consequences on the lunar moths. I am someone who absolutely loves cozy fantasy, and I have read that this is just giving off all of the cozy fantasy vibes, and the art in here is just so beautiful. I cannot with this. So super excited for this one. This next book I believe is being pitched as The Mummy meets Death on the Nile, which that alone sounds so exciting. So I had to pick this next book up, and that is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibáñez. This I read is full of Egyptian magic and folklore, but this follows our main protagonist whose name is Ines, and Ines' parents are, I believe, Egyptian archaeologists, and they go missing. And Ines ends up inheriting some of their fortune, and she also ends up inheriting this ring that belonged to her dad. But apparently this ring has some sort of magical powers, and the ring ends up pulling her to go to Egypt to further investigate what happened to her parents. So she ends up going to Cairo, I believe. Cairo in Egypt. She goes with I think a family friend and like a brother-in-law, and she goes to try and figure out what in the world happened to her parents. And when she goes there, she is faced with a world of magic that might be the cause to her parents' disappearance. I forgot to mention that this is a historical fiction fantasy murder mystery novel, so excited for this one. All right, this next one, if there's another thing you must know about me, is that I am obsessed with fae books. I am always looking for the next fae book that I am just going to make my whole personality about. And this next one is a prequel to the original book that I read, and that is These Twisted Bonds by Lexi Ryan. The first one in this installation was These Hollow Vows. I read it last year, you guys, and needless to say, I could not stop thinking about that story for, I swear, like 2 months. It was all I thought about because it was just that good, which makes me a little frustrated because I immediately went to go buy the next one in that installation and I have not read it. So in the first one, in These Hollow Vows, we follow Abriella, and Abriella is a human girl, and Abriella has a sister, and her sister ends up getting sold off to a Fae Lord. Abriella, of course, being who she is, she goes to the Fae Kingdom to try and retrieve her sister, and she is met with a whole bunch of secrets about herself as she is trying to retrieve her sister from where she's being kept. She ends up, of course, falling in love with two Fae King Lords whom she can't trust. Everyone sort of has their own agenda in the first installation, and how that book ended, it ended in a huge cliffhanger that I just couldn't get it out of my mind. What happened and how that ended. This is just a little spoiler for the first one that happened. Let's just say that Abriella and how that book, the first one, ended, is no longer a human. And that is how that ends. She ends up marrying someone and she is no longer a human. And so I'm excited to pick this up and see what the heck happens to Abriella and what she's going to do about it. So hopefully I can get to this book soon because I am a little upset at myself for not having read this yet. Moving on, friends. The next one that I have on here that I'm so excited about is The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. I got this from Half Price Books, as you can tell from the tag, and I got it for $9.49 and it's originally $18.99. So that was a pretty good steal and it is in great condition. So I am Mexican, and the thing that I am so excited about this book is that this is infused with Mexican folklore. I love reading anything that has to do with fantasy but mixed with Mexican folklore. This is a YA fantasy book, and in this story we follow Jade, and in this world there are trials that are called the Sunbearer Trials, and these trials happen every decade where semi-dioses or semi-gods, that's what they're called in English, between the ages of 13 and 18 are chosen. One of these semi-dioses are chosen, they are chosen to replenish the sun's powers, and the sun's powers need to be replenished because it is the sun's power, or the power of the sun, that keeps the obsidian gods at bay. And I'm assuming these obsidian gods are evil. So in this story, we are following 17-year-old Jade, who is a trans semi-god of Quetzal, who is the goddess of birds. So I believe Jade doesn't really worry about the sun trials because usually his kind don't get chosen for these types of trials, but something unexpected happens and Jade is all of a sudden worried about these trials. This just sounds so exciting. I've never read anything like this and I can't wait to get into it. This next book is Delicious Monsters by Lascelles Sambury. This is a YA horror paranormal mystery novel. And in this story, we are following Daisy and Brittany. So this is a dual POV setting, and we're following Daisy and Brittany but 10 years apart. They don't know of each other. So this has to do with a haunted house, and I believe Daisy was the first one that lived there, and something happened to her in this haunted house that we keep going back to like 10 years later to Brittany, who now lives at this house, I think facing the same challenges as Daisy once did. But also she ends up finding out that there was a girl who lived in that same house whose name was Daisy, who people sort of forgot about and they never found out what exactly happened to her. Actually, I believe she does a little bit of research on the house prior to moving there, or I don't know if she even moves there, but she ends up doing some sort of investigation on the house because she's trying to find out what happened to the prior girl that lived there that sort of went missing, or I'm not sure exactly what happened to her. So she gets wrapped up in that story, and in a way, I believe that similar things maybe start happening to her, or she gets too wrapped up in the story that it does something to her in some way. I love a good haunted house story, so I'm super excited for this one. Moving along, I have another horror book here, and that is The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu, which I also got at Half Price Books for $9.49, and this is originally also $18.99. So in this story, we are following our main protagonist, whose name is Ropa. This is set in Edinburgh, and Ropa, I believe, has some sort of magic. I believe it mentioned on here that they have Zimbabwean magic and also Scottish magic, which just sounds so amazing. And Ropa can apparently see ghosts. Ropa apparently oftentimes talks to the dead that haunt the streets of Edinburgh, and she's pretty much like a messenger. She talks to the dead, and the dead tell her what message they want to go tell maybe like a loved one, and so Ropa does that. She'll go and pass on these messages to the living. That is until one day when a ghost or ghosts of Edinburgh tell Ropa that there are certain evil ghosts, or just evil in general, bewitching the children of Edinburgh. They are harming the children. They are like sucking the life force out of them and leaving them empty of joy and life. So Ropa, because she can talk to the dead, she takes it upon herself to try and figure out who is the cause of this and try to save the children that are being bewitched in Edinburgh. So once Ropa sets off on this journey to try and figure out who is doing that, what evil is doing this, they end up stumbling upon an occult library. That is right, an occult library. Like, how cool is that? I am not sure how this occult library is tied to the children being bewitched, but I am excited to find out. So this book is actually a trilogy. So of course, if I am anticipating this one, I am for sure anticipating the next one in this trilogy, and that is Our Lady of Mysterious Ailments. I do not have the third one in this installation. I only have the first one and the second one. So in this story, we continue to follow our main protagonist, Ropa. But I believe in this story, Ropa, after coming off of this occult library that they came across, they are now faced with Lady of Mysterious Ailments, which I believe is a very specialized hospital in Edinburgh. I think they treat people there with magic or something like that. Something spooky is happening in this hospital that Ropa somehow gets involved to try and solve. I believe there's like this new illness that is taking over Edinburgh, and people are being treated at Our Lady of Mysterious Ailments, or I think in the story it's called Our Lady of Mysterious Maladies. So people are being treated at this specialized hospital, and it seems like this new illness that is consuming all of Edinburgh, it cannot be treated. Cannot be treated with magic, cannot be treated with special remedies. So Ropa gets involved to try and figure out what is happening, how can they treat this new illness that is unaliving people. And so Ropa is faced with another issue at hand to try and solve with their magic. I love that the setting is in Edinburgh. I love that this is giving me horror, gothic-y type of vibes. We have occult libraries, we have specialized hospitals. that have a really cool name. I am so excited for these books and I cannot wait to get into them. All right, so this next book is the second in this installation. And the first one from this installation was the whole reason why I got into cozy fantasy books. Many people know about this book. So this is the second one in the installation, and that is Bookshops and Bonedust. And of course, the first one was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. So if you have read Legends and Lattes, we all know that it went super viral and famous, I think like maybe 2 years ago, because of its cozy fantasy themes and low stakes. So I believe Bookshops and Bonedust follows the same sort of structure. So if you have read Legends and Lattes, this follows also Viv, our main character in the first book. But I believe this is before whatever happens in Legends and Lattes. This is when our main character Viv is in full mode being a warrior and a fighter. And in this story, I believe Viv gets wounded at some sort of war that she's fighting. And because she gets wounded, she has to go and take some rest. And she ends up at this cozy island somewhere. At this cozy island, she ends up staying at this bookstore. Here in this story, I believe, is where we see Viv kind of putting down her shield, putting down her sword, and realizing that a life for fighting and wanting to be a warrior might not be something that she wanted to do. She ends up staying at this cozy bookstore where she ends up figuring that out by reading books, by reading cozy books, by slowing down. I read that the characters in this story are just absolutely likable. So if you read Legends and Lattes, you know that Viv goes off on a quest to try and start her own coffee shop and to live a life more subtle, more at ease. So this story is the backstory as to how she came to realize that that is the life that she wants. And it all happens because she ends up getting wounded and she has no other choice but to take some rest and realizes that maybe fighting and being a warrior is not something that she maybe wants to do anymore. I read that these can be read as standalone novels. You don't have to read Legends and Lattes to read this one. These can be read separately. But of course, if you read Legends and Lattes, then you already know, you're familiar with Viv and her personality. I'm here for a good old cozy book, okay? If there's something that I love is cozy books, especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, exhausted. There's nothing like reading cozy fantasy to just feel rejuvenated. So that is Bookshops and Bonedust. All right, you guys, we are down to our last 2 books here. And this next one might be one of the books that I am just highly anticipating to read. And that is The Last Cuentista by Donna Barba Higuera. I read Alebrijes. It was the first book I read this year by Donna Barba Higuera. And that one came out recently. This, I believe, came out a few years ago. If you guys have been here, you guys have heard me talk about Alebrijes. I don't really read a lot of sci-fi books, and Alebrijes and this one is like a sci-fi type of fantasy-ish book. Both of the books are set in dystopian worlds, and I don't really read that type of genre. But let me tell you guys that I fell in love with Alebrijes, which led me to discover The Last Cuentista, because the epilogue in Alebrijes blew my brains out. I was like, no way, no freaking way. I don't know if this is related to Alebrijes, but how the epilogue ended just led me to this. Okay, I don't even know if they're related, but I just need to read this because it sounds like they're related based on what this is about, but I don't know. And I don't even care if they're not related. This alone just sounds so good. So for folks who don't know what The Last Cuentista means, it means like the last storyteller. And in this book, we are following Petra. Petra is our main character, and in this world, Earth has been destroyed by a comet. And so the last surviving humans are taken by these other people to another planet. So Petra and her family are chosen to go to this other planet because they're like the last survivors, the last human survivors. And then Petra all of a sudden finds herself waking up, and it's like 100 years later, and they are in a new environment. They are in a new planet. She doesn't know what happened, but she does remember her life on Earth. Apparently, these group of evil people have taken over the ship, the spaceship, or this whatever she's on, and they're dedicated to erasing all of the humans' memories that are on board in order to replenish, quote unquote, all the sins that they've done as humans on Earth. And they have done so. They have erased everyone's memories, including Petra, but Petra seems to still remember Earth. So Petra still remembers what happened in the past, and she must decide whether she wants to bring forth, you know, their culture, their roots, what happened before, and tell everyone else, or if she is faced to just assimilate with this new way of living without their memories, without sort of like their humanity, and just being introduced to this new way of living. So she has to choose, which kind of correlates to The Last Storyteller. I love how the title of the book relates to what the whole theme of the book is about. I am super highly anticipating to read this one, you guys. Alebrijes was just amazing. I believe these are both middle grade novels, or they fall under the middle grade young adult section. These are great. I love how they're also very much correlated to Latine sort of folklore, and how it is inspired by Latine just livelihood. In Alebrijes, I was reading the author's note how it was inspired by field workers, and that was just so touching. So needless to say, I am a huge fan of Donna Barba Higuera, and I just cannot wait to read more of their books. So that is The Last Cuentista. This last book that I have on here, friends, that I cannot wait to read is another middle grade book. What can I say? I love reading middle grade, okay? I am a 30-year-old who loves reading middle grade. And that is The Wild Robot by Peter Brown, which I also got at Half Priced Books. I only went to Half Priced Books once, like I think last month, and I just scored big, you guys, and they were fairly cheap. This was $4.49 and it was originally $8.99. It was in great condition as well. I remember seeing this somewhere around the interwebs, and the synopsis sounded cute, and I had just finished reading Alebrijes, and I was in a sci-fi era moment, and this has to do with a robot. So I was like, yeah, let's add it to the stack. So like I mentioned, this is a middle grade fantasy sci-fi book, and in this story we are following a robot whose name is Ross. And Ross one day ends up waking up, and she finds herself in a remote wild island, and she does not remember what happened to her. She ends up just waking up and she's there at this island. She is faced with critical conditions. She is being attacked by bears. She's being attacked by the critters and animals that live in this island, and it seems like she's just having a hard time adapting. So she realizes that if she wants to survive, she must adapt to these conditions, adapt to living like the animals in this island do, and befriend some of these animals. So she ends up doing that, and it ends up going pretty well. She is adapting to the lifestyle of the island. I think she's even making friends with some of the animals, and the island sort of starts feeling like home for her. She realizes, well, I might be staying here forever, so I might as well just make this my home. Until one day, Roz's mysterious past comes to look for her at the island, and that's all I know. I don't know what ends up happening to Roz after that, but I am eager to find out. And it's a pretty short novel. I believe this is only like 270 pages, so I can easily read this in like a day or two. So friends, here is my huge book stack of books that I am anticipating to read this year and tell you all about them. Ooh, this is getting heavy. I would love to know if you have read any of these books. Let me know down in the comments below. What were your thoughts on them? Let me know if you haven't read any of these books, which one sounds interesting to you. Would you read any of these? As always, friends, I always enjoy hearing from you, and you engaging with my videos really goes a long way. So I would really appreciate it if you liked, comment, subscribed, engaged in any way possible. I also want to mention that I have a cozy little Patreon where I host a cozy little book club where we are called the Story Keeper Society Book Club. Plus I offer additional content, downloadables, and art. So feel free to check that out. I'll have the link down below if you wish to learn more about that. But friends, again, thank you so much for being here. Remember that you can create the life that you want because you so deserve it. I appreciate you so much, friends. I will see you in a video very soon. Take care and bye for now.